What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first class of the Virtual Mobility Membership. So in this class, we are going to be covering hips. So going through this class is going to be just a lot of learning the basics of kind of what's to come in this Virtual Mobility Membership. So without further hesitation, let's get into it. So how we're going to start most classes is going to be with some sort of controlled articular rotation. I like to start with controlled articular rotations because it gives us some idea of where that joint is at, where it's feeling sticky, and just helps to warm that joint space up before we really get into the more nitty-gritty, deeper hip work. So today we're going to be starting with hip cars, but we're going to do them from a quadruped position. So if you're doing this at home and you're not sure of some of the cueing, a really good setup for this to almost make it feel like someone's there helping you is using a yoga block on your lower back, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So for these hip cars, I want you to make sure hands are placed underneath the shoulders, nice neutral spine. Big breath in, blow it out. All right, so we're gonna go. Here's how it's gonna be cued out. We're going to make sure to brace our core, so core staying tight. Because remember, we're going to minimize any movement anywhere else. Going left hip, we're going to go hip flexion first, so pulling that knee to the chest. Notice I'm not rounding my lower back at all. So I'm keeping that hip nice and flat, feeling that hip flexor work. Then we're going to go nice and slow, bringing that hip out into abduction. So you're going to go as far as you can without rotating. Should be going just as slow as I am. Right here, now you're going to create some internal rotation by lifting that ankle high as you can. And then you're going to go around into extension, bringing that hip back down to that position without letting it touch. Now we're going to reverse the direction. We're going to go straight up, keeping everything nice and neutral. Remember, not rotating onto that planted hip. Rotate out, external rotation, bring that knee all the way up to the elbow. So we're going to go 3 reps on this side, then we're going to switch 3 reps on the other side. So let's go again. Brace that core nice and tight, keep the hips neutral, knee to chest, leg out into abduction, nice and slow, big ankle lift all the way around into hip extension, pulling that down to the start. Kicking that up. Find that glute, find that hamstring. Keep those arms nice and straight, rotate out. Bring that knee up to the elbow, back down. Right back into rep number 3. Knee to chest. Knee out into abduction, big ankle lift. All the way around into extension. Pulling it down. Make sure that breathing stays nice and steady. Leg goes up, rotate out, knee all the way to elbow as far as you can, back down. Now, make sure you're trying to minimize how much movement's happening everywhere else in the system and that just that hip is working. All right, we got the right side now. Shake those wrists out a little bit. This will be the only section today where we are on our hands and knees. Everything else is going to be covered in our first base position. We'll get over that in just a second, though. So right here, same thing. Make sure to find that nice neutral hip. Let's go knee to chest. So find that hip flexor. Core should be lit up. We're going to bring that leg out into abduction without shifting our weight. Big ankle lift. Big circle all the way around. Bringing it down to the start position, not letting it touch. Up. External rotation. Bring that knee as high as you can towards that elbow. Back down. Brace that core, knee up. Flexion, abduction, internal rotation, extension. Back down. Reverse, extension. External rotation. Flexion and abduction. And back down. Last rep. Knee to chest. Knee comes out. internal rotation all the way around. Hips are staying nice and still. Pulling it down, reverse extension, rotate out, pulling that knee up to the elbow and down. All right, so that was our first 3 reps each side of our warm-up. Hopefully you got those muscles working, kind of maybe you felt some sticky points. It's always good to use those warm-up cars to kind of just figure out where you're tight that day, where the sticky points are, figure out what's feeling better on one side more than the other, and just kind of getting connected to the body. A lot of times I see people do these and they're just not connected to their body and just swinging their leg in a circle. All right, so our first base position. So we'll have a few base positions as we go through this mobility membership, and different classes will be based on certain base positions. So this is class 1. I always like starting with a 90-90 base position. So a 90-90 is probably one of the most foundational positions in Kinstretch, in mobility, in this virtual mobility membership. So we're going to start on our left side. So we're going to start right here. So we got 90 degrees, 90 degrees. So a big mistake I see a lot of people do when they set this up is that this leg is too far up and in. You want to make sure that this knee is in line with this hip while this knee makes a 90-degree angle. And same thing here in the front. You want to make sure that you're not set up too wide and that this knee is directly in front of this hip with this knee making a 90-degree angle as well. So I'm going to turn an angle so you can see my lower back as I do this, because one of the big cues I want you to pay attention to here is we're just going to get into this stretch first. So the idea here is we're trying to build some capacity around our external rotation, around our glutes in this position. So you're going to try to find that stretch in the glute of this front leg side. So we're going to try to stay nice and long in the spine. I want you to think if someone was pulling you at the top of your head, of like what that would feel like. So if I'm getting pulled at the top of my head, I'm going to stay nice and long. And I want you to think about reaching that belly button over the front leg. So that means that we're not going to be collapsing down into this stretch. I want you to stay long and strong through this stretch. So leaning forward, just holding right here. So this is about where I get to today. It could change from day to day, right? It's like flexibility has to do a lot with like how well we're hydrated, has to do a lot with what workouts we've already done that week. So if this is tighter than you expect it to be, that's fine. We're just working through with what our body's given us today. So you're just going to find this stretch, and we're going to hold this stretch for about 1.5 minutes. We're going to work through this position for probably close to 4 to 5 minutes. So I'm just taking big breaths, trying to stay in the stretch. Notice I'm keeping my hips really flat as I do this. And I'm just going to keep breathing into this stretch. If you want, you can, in my classes in person, I always tell people, explore the stretch on your own. Everybody has different lines of tension, and that means that your position might not be the same as someone else's where they're feeling the stretch. So meaning like you can rotate towards that foot a little bit, still staying long though. You can rotate the other way towards the knee, turning the torso this way. So for me, I noticed that I have a little more tightness in this line here, which makes sense because rotating towards the foot is going to give me more rotation through that hip. So I'm still leaning forward, still staying in that stretch. We're getting close, about another 45 seconds or so in this stretch. They say that real stretching of the tissues doesn't actually take place until after you hold our stretch for about 2 minutes. From that 2-minute on point, we're actually getting some lengthening in the fibers. And when we're trying to work mobility, one of the primary things behind mobility is flexibility, right? So that is increasing our range of motion passively. And once we increase our passive range of motion, we can then start to learn how to control that passive range of motion with isometrics and with movement paths. And we are going to see that passive range of motion start turning into active range of motion. So we're going to go over some new concepts today. So this first one is called PAILS. So it stands for Progressive Angular Isometric Loading. So it's a big fancy word for isometrics, basically. And what we're going to think about here is we're going to be doing PAILS on this front leg. So I'm going to be cueing out percentages, and I want you to do it at your perceived amount of tension of whatever you think that means. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be pushing this front leg through the ground, trying to activate from the glute. So staying in the stretch the whole time, that's the key here, because we want that stretch to also be getting activated in that stretch. So we're here. So let's start just trying to find that tension. So let's think about crushing a bug underneath our knee, driving that knee away about 20%. And then I want you to build it up to 40%. So we're pushing a little bit harder. Building up to 60. Notice I'm not moving though, so I'm staying in my stretch. Building up to 80. Should be a lot of tension. Now building up to 100%. I want you to try to crush the shit out of this mat or out of this ground with this front leg. Driving that, holding right there. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly relax that tension. As you relax the tension, see if you can sink a little deeper in the stretch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do rails contraction. So a rails is the regressive tissue or the tissue on the other side of the stretch. So progressive is because we're on the side of that we're stretching. Regressive is on the side that we're not stretching. But this regressive tissue is activating this is going to create length through the tissue that we're stretching too. So I'm going to think about now staying in my stretch that I'm trying to pull my knee off of the mat. Pulling my knee off of the mat. 10, 9, 8, 7. So I'm thinking about pulling this way. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax that tension. So you might notice some cramping, possibly in your back hip, from supporting you during this. This is completely normal. Cramping is something that people have to get used to when we're working on mobility. That's just what it comes down to. They tell us in these certification classes that if you're not cramping, you're not trying. That cramp is our nervous system trying to figure out how to use that muscle. And I tell a lot of my clients on the other side of that cramp is your new mobility. So try your best to fight through that crampy feeling. Now, granted, if you do cramp up, that's completely fine. Like you're going to just get out, shake it out, but then get back into that position and keep working through it. You're going to notice it's going to feel a lot better. So we're going to do one more set of these PAILS and rails contraction. So keeping nice and long spine. Big breath in. Brace that core. 20%, push that knee. 40, 60, 80, 100%. Hold right there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right there. Relax that tension. Now regressive activation. So now we're trying to pull that knee towards our chest. Big breath in. Brace. Lift. Hold right there. 10, 9, 8. Big tension in the hands. It helps a lot. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax that tension. So you're going to come out of that stretch just a little bit. You're staying in this position though. I know it sucks. We're going to get it all done on this one side. But we're going to turn towards our back leg now. So I'm going to rotate this way so you can see this back leg stretch that I'm doing. So now we are going to think about rotating this chest towards our knee. So there's a couple different ways depending on where your mobility is and what you're working on. So hands can be on thigh, on ankle, pulling me into this stretch a little bit more. This is one I like a lot because it gives me a lot of stretch right here in the top of the hip, which is what we're going for. If this is too much for you, leaning back tends to help a lot with getting that stretch in the hip as well. Main thing we want to avoid is any knee pain on the inside of this knee when we're doing this. If you do, play with the angle of the knee or play with the angle of the hip to see if you can relieve that knee pain at all. So right here, staying in the stretch. We're not going to hold this stretch quite as much because we are going to put this hip to work on the other side as well. So just breathing into this stretch. Making sure no knee pain. And it's pretty common that if you get into it at first, you don't feel any knee pain, and then you start breathing into the stretch and you start feeling some knee pain, just adjust your stretch. All right, right there, I got a good hip stretch. Just keep breathing. I want all this stuff opening up. Got another about 30 seconds or so. Groove this out. So what I also like to do in this last little bit of this is kind of just groove this hip out while I'm into this stretch. Let it sink back. I'm doing this by squeezing this butt cheek. All right, so right there. So now we're going to lean or turn back towards the front. So turning back towards the front, we're going to get some activation of this back hip. This is one that I see a lot of people cramp in the beginning. I might cramp, that's fine. But like I said, I want you to try to fight through that crampy feeling. That is the key to expanding our range of motion, is getting those nervous system and that muscle to work together. So right here, we're going to be doing a passive or an active range lift off. So meaning we're going to be lifting this ankle off the ground using the muscles in our hip. So I want hands braced into the ground. Squeeze this glute first. Big breath in. Lift that ankle off the ground. Hold right there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. Take a breath for a second. Try to fight off that crampy feeling. Mine's cramping up bad right now, so just because I'm keeping a straight face doesn't mean I'm not working it. All right, let's go again. Rep number 2. Brace the core, lift, hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set it down. Good. We're going to do 5 reps each side here. Let's go. Big breath. Lift. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set it down. 2 more reps. Lock in. Lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Last rep right here. Lift. 5, 4. Come on, keep holding. Come on. 3, 2. Squeeze more. 1. Down. All right. Catch your breath for a second. Let those hips shake out. Whew. It's a lot of tension. If you're doing it right, it should be burning right now. All right, so we're going to do some active external rotation on this, and this is going to help with our final movement we're going to do in our 90-90. So this external rotation with this back leg, thing I want you to do is get up on this toe, so my heel is staying off the ground the whole time. My toe is staying planted. So I'm staying nice and forward, nice and tall, and we're going to think about rotating this knee up. You might have done a clamshell before. It's kind of like a clamshell. So you're going to think about using this glute right here, brace that core, rotating the knee up, hold right there. Same thing, we're going to go 5 reps, 5-second hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set it down. Brace the core, lift, hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. 3 more. Up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Last 2. Lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Last one. Lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. Good. All right, shake those hips out for a second. Whew. That's tough. If this is your first experience with something like this, it is hard. Most people don't realize how hard this stuff is, and that, I mean, this feels like a workout. A lot of people get sore from the first time doing stuff like this, and it's completely normal. But that's why if you are doing the right strength training movements along with this, you're actually going to see a lot of more benefit outside of the mobility work as well with that proper strength training. All right, we're going to switch sides here. So now we got our right leg in front, our left leg is back. Now, here's what we're going to do though. So I do this a lot because if you feel this right now, we just worked the crap out of our front leg, so our right leg. So what I like to do is actually reverse the order. So we're going to start with this leg back here. This leg has been resting for a little while, and we're going to start with this, everything we did. So we're just flipping the order of that mobility work that we did for this side. So what I want you to do is you're going to think about rotating that chest towards that back leg, trying to find that stretch. You might notice you find the stretch easier on one side than the other. Completely normal. I notice that this side is tighter, so I'm getting the stretch a lot sooner. I'm going to hold the stretch for about a minute. I want you really trying to breathe into this position. Sometimes finding the stretch in this position can be the hardest part, but adjust yourself as like however you need to actually help you find that stretch. The knee needs to be up a little bit more. If it needs to be back a little bit more, a lot of times I see it needs to be back more than it needs to be up. But just find that stretch that's best suited for your hips. Like I said, this is not, oh, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. What we don't want here is that knee pain. So start getting those glute squeezes right there. All right, so we're about that minute mark. So let's lean it back forward. Keep that spine nice and long. So remember, we want to squeeze that glute first. Keep that core brace nice and tight. And we're thinking about lifting that ankle off the ground. Hold right there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Set it down. Rest. Up. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Turn this way a little bit more for these next 3. Sorry about that. Nice and tight. Lift. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. We got 2 more. Big lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Last one. Come on, hold it. Squeeze that glute. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Good. So because we already kind of know what we're doing, we're just going to get right into the next part. So remember, now we're going to go into those external rotations. So keeping that big toe planted of this back leg, lift that heel off, brace yourself into the ground using those hands, and use that glute. Rotate that knee as high as you can. Lifting right there. Hold. Keep that big toe planted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. Good. Let it tap. Right back up. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. And up. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Down. And up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And down. Good. All right. Take a breath for a second. Now, because now we're getting into, the nitty gritty that's going to be on this front leg. So now we're going to start thinking about our stretch on this front leg. So staying in our 90s, you want to stay as long as you can. So if at any point, if you've gotten to this point and you're like, man, this front leg is really tight, it's really hard to get into, what you can do is you can use a yoga block or something to prop your front glute up to help you create more stretch in a better position here. So what I want to do, remember, staying nice and long, staying tall, reaching that belly button over that front leg. And we're going to lean till we find that stretch. So last big work right here, trying to really expand that space. Then we're going to groove through some movement paths. I'll show you what a movement path is here shortly. Just keep breathing into this position. Keep finding the stretch. Remember, we got to hold this stretch for about 2 minutes. Just keep breathing into it. Explore that stretch if you want to. Just find those positions that are tight. Everyone's tension is going to be a little different. How your hips are not going to be how the same way someone else's hips are, and that's completely fine. Got another about a minute right here. Just keep breathing into that stretch. Make sure you're not holding your breath. Make sure you're trying to connect your breath to that stretch. Every exhale, I want you trying to exhale into that glute to feel that stretch. Staying long, keeping those hips neutral. Keep breathing, stay tall. So just like we did on the other side, now we're going to think about driving this knee through the ground. Remember, you already have knowledge of kind of what we're going to try, the feelings we're trying to get into, so now we're just going to get into it. So making sure everything's braced nice and tight, staying in your stretch. I don't want you to leave the stretch, staying in the stretch. 20%, start pushing that front knee down. Now build it up to 40. Build it to 60, 80%, 100%. Pushing that knee as hard as you can into the ground. Hold it right there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And relax that activation. But we're not relaxing. So now we're thinking about pulling this knee directly up towards the chest, activating the other side of that tissue. Hold right there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And relax that tension there. Find that stretch again. See if you can sink a little deeper into the stretch on this second go around. All right, next one, last one right here. Let's go big drive through that front knee, 20%. All right, let's go 40, 60, 80, 100%. Driving the hell out of that knee into the ground. Your glute should be on fire. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that tension there. Remember, we're not relaxing. Now, pull that knee up to the chest. Hold right there. 10. Brace that core. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax that tension there. All right, slowly start working your way out of this. Stretch. We're staying in this 90 though. So the last thing we're doing is we're going to go through some really challenging what's called 90-90 transfers. So I'm actually going to move my mat to the side because I want to be able to, no, I'm not going to do that. I think we'll be good. If you can move your mat. If you want to, you can move your mat to the side, give you a little more room. But I think we'll be good right here. So I'm going to turn this way because I'm going to be facing you here in a second. So this 90-90 transfer, I see a lot of people do these on the internet, and most of them do it wrong, honestly. And they just move through the range of motion. They're not actually trying to expand their range of motion with this. This is why I see them as you see people just moving back and forth in this position. What I want you to do is we're trying to maximize the tension through this range of motion. And I'll show you what that means right now. So we're starting with this back leg, and we're starting with that same rotation open that we did in those trail leg external rotations. So ways to make this easier: lean back on your hands. You don't have to stay upright. Staying upright is the hardest way to do it. But so leaning back on your hands can make it a little bit easier. Like I said, rotating this leg open as far as you can, find that glute. Now, once you feel yourself hit that block, you're going to start letting yourself rotate towards the front. As I'm doing this, I'm keeping this knee pushing down through the ground in those Pales contractions that we just did. Now I'm trying to rotate open as far as I can, keeping my knees away from each other as much as possible. So I'm still driving this knee down, I'm still driving this knee this way. I'm opening up. Now I have a big stretch in my groin area, feet are out. Groin is still open up. So I'm still pushing my knees away from each other. Now the tension starts to shift. Now I'm shifting to this glute, pushing this knee towards the floor, lifting this knee off the floor. Around, just like that. And we're going to do 3 of those because they're going to be that slow. We're going to go 3, or I should say 4, because we're going to end up back on the other side. Now, same thing. We're going to rotate open. I'm going to do this one leaning back on my hand so you can kind of see what that looks like. So I'm rotating open as far as I can. Pushing this knee down. Rotate, rotate, rotate. As much as you can. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Get the legs, knees as far apart from each other as you can. Back on the hands. Lifting the knee up, pushing this knee down. Driving this knee through. Right there. So you can make it hard even when you're on your hands. It's just all about the tension you're creating in the hips. Remember that principle of irradiation. That is what we are trying to accomplish with stuff like this. Not just moving through the range of motion. All right, last rep each side right here, and then you guys are finished with your first class. Let's go back leg lift. Squeeze. Try to take your hands off if you can. Squeeze up as high as you can. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Keeping this leg driving into the ground. Should be shaking right now. I want a ton of tension. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Big groin stretch. Rotate. Good. Tension down. Switch the tension. All right. Rotate back leg. Big lift, big lift, big lift. Keep the other knee down to the ground as long as you can. Rotate. Big stretch, big stretch, big stretch. Rotate across. And then set it down soft. And that is it. That is class 1. Some of the beginner principles of what this mobility class is about. I don't know about you, my hips are on fire. So keep up with the hip mobility work. You can do some of the lighter stuff or some of the stretches on other days, but I definitely recommend giving yourself a day or 2 before trying these things again. That way you can kind of give yourself a little idea of like how these things feel.